They have the iPhone. They got Apple Music. They have iCloud subscriptions, right? They have the iPad. Apple has a lot of revenue streams. Yo, what's going on, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of Financial Freedom Fastlane. Remember, the quicker you get to your dream life, the longer you get to enjoy it. And I'm your host, George Achimpong. Man, so we are fresh off our first stop on the live podcast tour. So if y'all didn't attend, Houston was a complete vibe. Thank you all who tapped in, who got a chance to come out. It was super, super fun. And also shout out to 18,000 subscribers on YouTube. 18,000 subscribers, man. We are extremely grateful for our growth, 90% of which has happened in the past 8 months. So we went from like 1,000 subscribers in our first year to like averaging like a couple thousand every month. So we're super, super grateful. We know people have hundreds of thousands of subscribers, millions, but we are grateful for the tens of thousands. And we just want to thank you guys for tuning in, for supporting, because we have a mission to help 100,000 people of color achieve their first 1 million in net worth. We want you to be one of them. And one of the ways to do that is to consistently tap in and consistently take action on the gems shared on this show, on the Melanin Money Show and the Tax-Free Living Show, all the segments that are currently on the Melanin Money Media Network. All right, so a couple housekeeping things. So right now, I actually had a really good laugh. I'm actually recording this about like 11 o'clock at night. I am on double daddy duty. And whenever I say that, all I mean is that maybe my wife is out of town. My wife is traveling. She's in Vegas right now with her mother and her sisters, checking out Usher. He has like a residency out there or whatever. So like she's out there having a blast, and I'm here holding down the fort with the little man. He's asleep right now. Let's hope he stays that way so I can get through this recording. But the reason why I had to laugh is because if I slide back just like a half an inch, you guys will see that I actually have my pajama pants on, because when I finish this, I'm going to sleep. Because the goal of getting sleep with the toddler is making sure, or is it infant? I guess it's toddler. The goal is to go to sleep when they go to sleep, because you never know when they're gonna wake up, right? So I'm playing hooky right now to get this content in and stay consistent for y'all. And also, I just want to always be honest and transparent. I know online it can feel like people like have a content team with them at 24/7 and they're just pumping and cranking out stuff and they're just like all systems go, and that's just not the case, right? At least not for me, right? I run multiple businesses. I'm a husband, I'm a father, and sometimes it's not always smooth. Most times it's not always smooth sailing. And I think given that context, it's helpful for people who are on their journey, whether it's content creation or whether it's building a business of any kind, just to know that we're all out here trying to do what we can with what we got. But we go and get it done regardless. That's the main message I want you guys to take away from, is like, hey, look, the circumstances are the circumstances, but I walk the walk, I talk the talk, and no matter what those circumstances are, I'm going to show up for you guys. All right, so let's get into it. Today, I want to talk about 5 things that we can learn. Maybe it's more than 5. We'll see. That we can learn from Apple when it comes to building a business. It's no secret that Apple is a behemoth of an empire, and they've done a lot of things right over the years. One thing that they did most recently is they are now more formally and more deeply entering into the banking sector, right? They dropped their Apple Card a few years ago, which I have. But most recently, they also rolled out a high yield savings account, right? And that's going to be huge. I would argue that within a couple years, Apple is going to be within the top 5 of banking, right? Because of how many customers they already have. And we're going to talk about that a little bit today. So I thought that was cool. And I thought it'd be a great time to highlight some of the things that Apple's done really, really well, that no matter what your business size is, that you can pay attention to take your business to the next level so you can achieve financial freedom faster. All right, let's get into it. All right, so first things first. They say the devil's in the details. I never really understood that quote, but whatever, right? Details matter. And so one thing that Apple does really, really well is their packaging. Some people don't care about their packaging. And some people would argue that packaging doesn't care because most of us just throw it away. But how many of you right now have boxes from MacBooks, iPads, iPhones, or any Apple product that you purchase, right? Hence this box right here. And so what I thought was really cool, and I was doing some research, Apple does this thing where it's like, you can't just pull the top off, right? See, even if I wanted to, I couldn't just snatch it off, right? It's just a slow release, right? And then when it's new, there's so many little details in terms of like taking off the sticker and peeling things back. It's an experience, right? The unboxing part of it in and of itself is an experience. So much of an experience that most of us never use the boxes again, but don't throw it away. And maybe some of us justify with excuses saying like, oh, well, what if I resell it and I still have the box? How many iPhones have you resold where you needed the box? Probably 0, right? But Apple has a whole department dedicated to the science of their packaging, right? And so what does that tell you? That if Apple, one of the largest companies in the world, thinks that packaging is important, you probably should too. How can I create an experience at every interaction with my consumer, right? Because think about it. If somebody's buying a product from you, their first interaction with the brand is the packaging. And as the saying goes, first impressions are everything. So ask yourself, how can I elevate my packaging and customer experience? You got to remember too, we live in a very virtual world. So I think now more than ever, when people are getting packages and stuff like that, right? These are micro experiences that people are, trying to create, right? Excuse me. So how can we create these experiences? Through our packaging, right? Having a little tissue paper, having the frilly stuff, just giving them something, right? That's more than just a brown box where you're just opening it, getting your stuff and throwing it away. Now, I'm not saying that now what I would say is that your main focus should be having a quality product, right? I think some people put too much emphasis on packaging and making it pretty. We don't actually put enough focus on their business, right? Some people put so much focus on the brand, they forget about putting the focus on the business. So I do think it's important to make sure you have a quality product, but in that process, how can we elevate our packaging to give our customers a better experience, right? Another one is, how can you think of your customers with the end in mind and create a product or service that is intuitive by nature? Here's what I mean by that. I can probably count on 2 fingers how many times I've watched one of Apple's like special rollout and releases, right? Where they tell you like all the features and benefits. I think the running joke is like Apple like sells us the same phone year over year, but I don't really watch many of those updates, right? But what does inadvertently happen is I'll do something just what seems natural on my phone, right? Not even thinking about it, not knowing that this update exists. And then I learn something new about the iPhone, right? Or whatever the device is that I'm using. And I think the reason why that is because Apple is thinking, if I was a user, how would I just intuitively, right, use this tool? What would just naturally make sense, right? So when someone does it naturally, they stumble upon new features. The first time that this hit home for me was, I think this was probably back in like 2012 or 2013. And this is when I think they had rolled out a new update for the calendar. And I was like holding my finger down on the screen. I was like, I want to move this thing to the next day or something like that. And then I didn't know that it could technically do that. Just intuitively, I was wondering, it's a touchscreen phone. Can I touch this and move it to the next day? I was like, oh shoot, I can move this calendar event to the next day. Now, while that seems simple, think about how much more arduous it would be if the only way to update your calendar from your phone is to tap the event, hit edit, change the time, and then move it over to the next day. Versus like, oh, let me slide this from 3 o'clock on Wednesday to 2 p.m. on Thursday. Very intuitive, great user experience. And so I think Apple does that really, really well. And I think they do a really good job of just like thinking of how would my user benefit from this particular feature. All right, so this is a big one. How can you create a deep brand ecosystem, right, that allows your customers to continue to spend money with you over and over and over again, and maybe even make some of those products complimentary? So let's go through it right now, right? For example, right now I'm recording this video on an iPhone 14, right? I am screencasting this video on a MacBook Pro. I'm viewing my notes for this episode on an iPad, right? So that's just 3 of the devices. But Apple has so many devices. They have Apple TV, iPad, iPhone, iMac, iPods. As a matter of fact, AirPods, I should have said. Their AirPods, right, make up more revenue than some tech companies make in totality, right? Quite a few actually, just for their AirPods. It's crazy, right? And so they've created this brand ecosystem where all the products, right, complement each other, and they almost make it uncool to not have it or inconvenient to not have the product. So for example, from a convenience standpoint, if I have a MacBook and I have an iPhone, I can AirDrop, right, stuff to my computer, AirDrop stuff to my iPad, and that's a lot more convenient than the traditional ways of transferring data, right? If someone doesn't have an iPhone and I'm texting them, oftentimes the images will come through blurry, right? Like they literally change the mechanism of sending messages from iPhone to iPhone versus iPhone to another device, right? And literally people make running jokes about, oh my gosh, did you see the green bubble? And it's just a text message. Think about the paradigm shift they created by saying, I'm gonna make it almost uncool to not be in this ecosystem of brands, right? That is a powerful thing to do. So as a small business owner, like just think, again, we're not Apple, right? But if you think like the big companies, you can build a company that can grow into a big company. So what things can you do, right, to number one, deepen your brand ecosystem, AKA the lifetime value of your customer? I don't even wanna know how much money I've spent on Apple products since my first one. I think my first Apple product was the iPhone in 2000, the first iPhone, whenever that came out, 2009, right? I feel like it's like that Love Jones moment where I'm having a flashback to my first love. But yeah, like I have been buying Apple products consistently since 2009. Think about that. It is now 2023. That is insane, right? So how can you create a brand ecosystem and complementary products to continue to have your customers spend money with you over and over and over again? Because oftentimes we think about recurring revenue as like a monthly membership, right? Like a Netflix, which is a form of recurring revenue, monthly recurring revenue. But recurring revenue is also creating a brand ecosystem where customers are continuing to shop with you. Maybe it's every month, maybe it's every year. But if they're doing it for a decade, I've been shopping with Apple for over a decade, right? Like almost a decade and a half at this point, I believe. So how powerful is that? Follow what I'm saying? So it's not about just subscriptions, right? But like, how can I create a business where my customer would need to come back again and again and again? Maybe that's making updates to a core product that is now a part of their lifestyle. And when the new feature rolls out, they gotta have it. Maybe it's creating complementary products that enhances the user experience of the products that they have, right? Maybe it's products that make using their products more seamless if they have that one. So those are things that you can think about when building your brand ecosystem. All right, so this one's kind of a piggyback off of the last point, so I'll make it quick, but create brand loyalty through exclusivity. Right, so I talked a little bit about the blue bubble, right? And all the things that you can do when you're sending messages with other people who have Apple products, right? That is a level of exclusivity, right? So how can you add an element of exclusivity in your business to where customers can only get that feature if they have your product? Because people love exclusivity, they just do. It's the way of the world. So how can you create that within your business? And again, I'm not gonna elaborate too much on this because I already touched on the power of the blue bubble. All right, this is one that every entrepreneur can learn from, right? Never stop improving your product. Part one. And number two is always release your product before it's ready and just roll out updates, right? Imagine if we're on iPhone 14 now, right? That means, I think it equates to years roughly, or maybe Apple comes out with a new product every other year or something like that. But more to the stories, there's 14 new iPhones, okay? So what Apple does is they roll out a product but I think the iOS, the technology is like on 16 or 17, right? Because what they do is they roll out a product and they know there's bugs, they know there's kinks, they know that there's improvements, but they roll it out anyway. And then when they have sorted through those kinks, bugs, and improvements, they roll out an update that you can push directly to your phone, right? I believe that Steve Jobs had a vision for the iPhone as it is today, right? But it makes, number one, good business sense to not just like roll that product out immediately, because then they wouldn't have 14 different phones that they could iterate. But more realistically, right, maybe there were some components that just didn't exist in that current, like in that time where it's like, we know we want it to get here, but let's roll out what we got right now. How many billions of dollars would Apple have missed out on? They said, we're not going to release the first iPhone until we can get it to like the version that it is right now. How many billions of dollars would Apple would have lost if they did that, right? You can live in the house while it's being renovated. Remember that, right? Stop waiting till your product is perfect to roll out. If Apple can do it, so can you. All right. So put your product out to the world as it is right now, and then make updates incrementally over time. No one knows what the end game of your product is supposed to be except for you. So make those updates, but roll that product out before it's ready, right? And also never stop improving, right? Apple probably, could have, well, I don't think they would be the Apple that we all know and love if they didn't keep improving, but they've had a good product for a while. But in order to continue to evolve the business, and in order to continue to add value to the customers, they're always looking for ways to just make that slight tweak, right? Make that competitive edge. Of course, the business reason is that they want to sell you something new, right? It's almost counterproductive to create the best product from a business standpoint, which is crazy as it sounds, because then you won't have anything new to create. So that's another story for another day, how the economy works. All right, this is one that I love. Simplicity always wins. So when the iPhone first came out, it had one single button, right? And this was at a time when phones still had big keypads. Like Apple used to get laughed out of like the boardrooms when they were trying to become like a leader in the business market, right? It's like, what is this phone with no buttons? How am I going to do business? But what Apple understood is the power of simplicity, right? What Apple does, in my opinion, is they do all the heavy lifting, right? All the complexities behind the scenes and say, let's do all of that on the behalf of our user, so that by the time the product gets to them, it can be super simple, right? It can be sleek, it can be refined, and just like really, really easy to use. I think Samsung has always had better cameras than the iPhone. I think the iPhone is starting to produce some pretty decent cameras, but like, I think Samsung has always had better cameras. And I've heard Samsung users say that the technology is superior. The challenge is the user face and experience, or what do the tech people call it? The UX, right? User experience is not that great. Apple's done a great job of having a simple, clean, seamless, sleek user experience that users can love, and they make it really, really simple. Right? It's very, very simple. It's not complex, not the back button, reverse, up, down, left, right, like some of these Samsung devices are. And it's very, very straightforward. So how can I streamline and simplify the user experience? Thinking about a website, for example, oftentimes, if your website is hard to like move and navigate through, your conversion rate is going to go through the floor, because people are going to be like, oh, I'm out of this, right? So how can I think the better terminology is, how can I create less friction for my user from what they want out of the product, right? Versus how they have to use it. So when you think about like a checkout experience, if somebody can just pull out their phone, add it to their cart, do the little click on the side, Face ID, Apple Pay, not pull out a card, pay for it, your conversion rates are going to go through the roof, right? How many times have you been online about to buy something and they couldn't connect to PayPal, couldn't connect to Apple Pay, or some form of money that you already have like baked in, or Shop Pay or whatever it is. And because of that, you literally didn't buy the item because you didn't have your payment method connected, or couldn't connect, and your wallet's upstairs, right? So you have to reduce friction. And oftentimes as entrepreneurs and business owners, we get lazy and we settle. It's like, oh, well, they should be able to do X, Y, and Z. They should, but the more seamless you can make that user experience, the more use the customer is going to get out of the product. And from a business transaction standpoint, the higher likelihood that they're going to be able to convert, right, the sale a lot higher. So never get too comfortable and always ask yourself, maybe that can be a core value. How can I need to write this down myself. How can I make it easier for my customer to get the most out of my product or service? All right, and last but not least, lucky number 7, the power in building a brand, right? The power in building a brand. Earlier in the episode, I talked about how Apple is literally with the snap of their fingers, and I'm saying snap of their fingers, who knows how long they've been building this out behind the scenes. I think Apple is so strategic in what they do. But now they have this high yield savings account, right? And because they have so many customers, and more importantly, they have a trusted brand, right? They don't have to go through all these hoops to build trust. So many people already use Apple. So for example, when Apple decided to roll out, Apple Music, right? People love Spotify, people love all these other streaming services, but it's like, man, but I already got Apple. And again, they're gonna make it easier for me to use. I'm just going to use Apple Music, right? So the same thing with banking, right? People already know, like, and trust Apple. So when Apple says, hey, we're rolling out this banking partnership, you should join us, it's a no-brainer, right? Because when you build a brand, you can diversify your revenue streams to the moon, right? I don't know the exact number of revenue streams it is. Maybe I'll look it up. Once it's like probably definitely more than 17, maybe even upwards of 30. But Apple has, I'm gonna just name the ones I can think of off the top of my head. They got Apple Music. They have iCloud subscriptions, right? They have the iPhone. They have the iPad. They have the MacBook. They have the iMac. They have Apple TV. They have AirPods and other variety of headphones, not to mention all the accessories and things of that nature, right? So Apple has a lot of revenue streams. And they don't just have a lot of revenue streams because these products are complementary or because they can come out with as much stuff as they want to come out with. It's because they've built an immense amount of brand loyalty, right? And now all they can do is just flip a switch. And if just a small percentage of their customers opt in, it means billions of dollars or hundreds of millions at the very least, right? So the more you can build a brand, the more it's going to give you leverage to diversify your revenue stream. Because in my mind, brand is almost synonymous with trust and or being known for something. And so when you've established that trust, people will likely trust you again, right? I think there's this quote that I use called the trust of one leads to the acceptance of many. And typically I mean that in a sense of like brand partnerships, right? If my audience, if you guys trust me and I say, hey, I think Chase is an amazing bank, and Chase starts sponsoring the podcast, and I say, hey, you should tap in with Chase, you guys are probably going to consider Chase because you built a level of trust with me. But from a branding standpoint, that same quote holds true. The trust of one leads to the acceptance of many, meaning once I got your trust with one product that you absolutely fell in love with, now that's going to lead to the acceptance of many different products in the future. All right, guys, I hope that was helpful in learning how you can build a brand just like Apple. If this was valuable to you, if you could please do me a huge favor, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, leave a comment and let me know what you thought about this episode. And most importantly, share this with somebody else who you think will find value, because that's how the channel grows. The way I can continue to show up and do this for absolutely free is by you tapping in, sharing, and spreading the good news. And of course, if you want to tap in person, make sure that you come to our next live podcast tour stop. It is going to be in New York City, big New York City, the Big Apple. It's going to be June 8th, I want to say. So make sure you type in, link will be in the show notes, proofandprofits.com to grab your ticket. We're going to be doing some giveaways, some cash giveaways to jumpstart your portfolio. So we want to make sure that you're in the room, because being in the room is really key to leveling up your business and your brand. All right, so I'll see you there. And remember, the quicker you get to your dream life, the longer you get to enjoy it. Freedom is for sale if you're willing to pay the price.